these good, like this distance right here?
Yeah, I have it so you can put it pretty close to your face.
Okay.
All right, Chad Medved, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm here in Pennsylvania right now, McKeesport, Pennsylvania. I'm here with the host and creator of I'll Call You Right Back podcast, Chad Medved. And what I really wanted to do with this episode is, one, I wanted to figure out what your intentions were with your podcast and how you came about it. So, first off, where did you work? What's your backstory? What's going on?
I work at I work at an engineering company, and I design pipes. So if customers hit me up and they might need like a certain elbow to fit their layout of their workspace that they have, I pretty much design the pipe and work with our manufacturer and our warehouse on site and create that. And that's pretty much it. Just different variants of it, you know.
Okay, so it's just for like work companies, or is it for like housing pipes as well?
No, it's pretty much for bigger companies like propane treatment plants, things like that. Things that are doing multi-sectional places. Like I work in coal mines. Bailey Coal Plant is like the biggest coal plant in the North America. That's one of our people. So we work with them, and they will contact us to say like, oh, we need a big ass 90-degree elbow that's 18-inch outside diameter, and I pretty much just have to design it to fit where it needs to be and efficiently, and just make sure it works out.
Okay. Have you been on the coal mine site?
Yeah.
How crazy of an experience is that? Because I mean,
it's super wild.
Yeah,
it really is. Because like it's the dirtiest place ever.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very dirty, and it's very, very like it's just honestly a big industrial site. So everything's super dangerous. You're always like on guard because there's big ass belts and machines right next to you that could literally rip your body in half. And I'm a bigger dude, so I don't like heights, but I have to climb up on ladders and, you know, take measurements of these big ass pipes and everything. And it's not terrible, but, you know, I would like to not be dirty.
Yeah.
You know, it's fascinating because this big ass plant, the biggest coal mine in the North America, and like you barely see anyone in there running it. So it doesn't take many people to sustain this plant, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah,
to me.
really. I would expect there to be workers within sight distance every time you go down there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not like now. Whenever I say it's like, I don't work in the mine, but I work at the top of the mine where shit's getting pulled out of it.
Okay.
So where they're like manufacturing the coal, and I'll go in there, and we pretty much only have to go in there whenever we got to take measurements and, you know, take care of all that stuff.
All right. What got you to that job? Was that something you wanted to do, or?
In high school, I wanted to be a teacher. I went to school for elementary ed and special ed for a year. And I always worked well with like kids with disabilities, and you know, I worked well with kids. So I wanted to be a teacher. I went to Slippery Rock for a year, and I just didn't really like my experience there. You know, I don't drink, and college is on the weekends. If you're not drinking at a party, there's really nothing to do.
Yeah, I was in the same boat with you with my college experience, because I went for physical therapy assisting.
Yeah.
I made it through a year and 3/4 probably, and I was just like, I can't handle it because I'm not a drinker. I don't party.
Yeah, I mean, I failed my first semester of Slippery Rock. I got like a 3.2, and then my second semester I just like failed out because I had no motivation to work towards anything that had to do with that. I just knew that to be a teacher I would have to probably, this was in 2009, so I would have had to like move out of state to get a decent job, and I'm a homebody. I like being around people. I like being around my people, so I didn't really want to move away. So I went to school at Slippery Rock for a year, and then I was like, you know, forget school. I'm not going to go to school. I'm just going to work for a year. or I'm just going to start working. And, I didn't plan on going back to school, but I started working at this machine shop, and it was another just terrible job, getting paid like $10 an hour to work with this like powdered tungsten metal. And I basically just filled these big ass molds with this like powdered metal that was it was just hot all the time. You had to wear full gear, face mask. It was just a terrible experience, and you're only getting paid $10 an hour. And then I'm just like sitting there, and I didn't want to go back to school, but I look at my surroundings, and I'm like, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? And it was to the point where the older people around me that I was like working next to, they were literally telling me like, get out of here while you can. And it kind of like scared me into not wanting to get stuck in that same wake up, work 2 minutes away from where you grew up, and die there pretty much. So I was like, I'm going to go back to school. I went to PTI, and killed it there just because like I was done like messing around with shit and wasting time, and I just wanted to make my own money and start my own life and get my own house and move out and shit. So went to PTI, did well there because it was stuff that like I enjoyed. I chose taking the path of like the technical college side, because in high school I took CAD classes since 5th grade, so I was always good at drawing and visualizing shit in like the 3D layout of it. So I was always good at that, and I was like, I might as well go towards that because you could always find jobs in that.
Oh yeah.
So went to PTI, did well there, and got a job at FedEx starting out for my internship, and it was just like nothing. You just sat there and you did no work. But fast forward, and now I'm here, and I'm at my company, and I've been there, and this is the first job that I had out of school that I'm not like actively depressed at.
Yeah.
My last like 3 jobs, like I've never been more depressed in my life, like waking up and going to work for something that you hated. So now I'm lucky enough to have a good setup.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feels like both of our stories are kind of on a similar wavelength, because I just currently quit a job that was similar to yours, where you didn't want to be there, you absolutely hated it. And it's not like it's not a bad job though. It's just it's not what you want to do. It's not the place you want to be.
Not what you're passionate about.
Yeah. And my passion is fitness and health. So I've been taking courses through certifications to get personal training certifications, correctional exercise, things like that. And once I finally got all my ducks in a row and I was ready to make the step to go to train in a gym, say, I got an application, I turned it into my new work, and they accepted me, and I was like, all right, it's time to go. It's time for me to actually start what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody goes through that point, and it might not necessarily be, hey, I don't want to go to college, but maybe you go through one subject that you thought you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then you end up not liking it, and you're just trying to find your own path,
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's ridiculous. I say it on my podcast all the time. Like, I don't really understand how, our school system is like getting away with what they're doing, because I mean, how are you supposed to know what you're wanting to do for the rest of your life whenever you're 16? They start asking you. I think they started asking us in 9th grade, like, oh, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And you have no idea. So why should you have to, just jump into something whenever you don't have any sort of plan laid out and just get yourself in a bunch of debt? And, it's just a big-ass trap. But luckily, like, nowadays we're living in a different world that's kind of, it's super progressive to the point where people are taking different routes than regular schooling, and doing trades and being very entrepreneurial and starting their own businesses. And the environment today is it's definitely a shaky environment. People are always walking on eggshells and stuff, but it's definitely still like progressing to the point where younger people and the younger generation have more outlets to have a career rather than just like the typical shit that your parents and grandparents say, like go to school, get a job, get married, have kids, and die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like not everyone wants to do that.
Exactly.
If you don't want to do that, you're considered to be like weird because it's just like not the norm. But it's just, imagine what it was like 10 years ago. It was a completely different world.
Oh yeah, of course.
So, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting to see it all happening.
Mhm. So moving forward with this, I heard you were listening to your podcast. You were really into clothing and things like that. You worked at a boutique, right? Like a small boutique.
Yeah, I worked at a place called Threads on Carson, which was it's a clothing boutique in the south side of the city, and we carried like all different brands, different like higher end fashion brands, the Hundreds, Pink Dolphin, Subi jeans, Kappa, all kinds of stuff. But we specialized in having like the exclusivity of it all. So we would have the limited run of shoes and shirts and everything like that. But I worked there for a few years, but I've always been into like, the pop culture shit. I grew up as a skateboarder, so I was always kind of like into fashion and kind of dressing weird and kind of always dressing my own way and like my own style. And I never kind of got rid of that. I've always been into clothes, what's going on in the world, fashion, pop culture, music, and that was a cool place to be at.
And it seems like you've talked to a lot of your guests know you from Threads on Carson, correct? Or
yeah, I mean that place is, I would say, this second, if not first, clothing boutique in the city. So like, it was super popular. I had people coming in all the time. It was a good place to network. I met a lot of people there. A lot of people met me because like we'd have customers all the time, and usually our customers, we're selling jeans that are like $200. Not everyone's gonna come in and buy them.
yeah,
So there's different customers that come through. We had Steelers coming through, people that sold drugs, people that had good jobs. You know what I mean? You would meet a variety of people in there, and I was a manager for many years there, and people start seeing your face and they start knowing you and you start knowing them and building a relationship, and it just makes it a little bit easier to once people know you and know that you like how you conduct yourself at work, people coming through and dealing with me every day, they knew that I was like a talker, I was like a charismatic person. I'm always like, I could find common ground with everyone. So anyone that came through, I would link up. I would make that link with them, and eventually down the line, there was people that I would meet that would like interest me, and I would always put them on a list because like I knew I wanted to start the podcast up again, and I knew that was a good opportunity. So I would meet photographers, rappers, entrepreneurs, people who plan parties and do all kinds of events like that. So I would just write them down on the list, and whenever I started the podcast, and I contacted them, and it just made it a little bit easier that they knew who I was.
yeah. So you working at Threads on Carson was in between your last podcast and your current podcast?
Yeah, I mean the Threads on Carson was I just stopped working there a couple months ago. So
okay.
yeah, so it was a couple months ago, and then I worked there for 3 years. So my first podcast I did was in 2013, and we only did that for like 10 or 12 episodes. We all started going to school, and it kind of like just dissolved. And then I got my foot in the door in the corporate world and started working, and then I met the owner of Threads on Carson at my previous job, and he was like, "Oh, I heard you." I had my own clothing line at the time, and someone at work told him that I did that, and he would always ask my opinion because I'm kind of well versed in it. I always pay attention. I always see what's new and what's coming out. So he would always ask my opinion on shit, and he was like, "Do you know anyone that would want to work part-time?" And I was like, "I want to work part-time there." And I was already working 40 hours a week. So he was like, "You'd work, 6-7 days a week." And I was like, "Yeah, man, like, let's do it." So for 3 years I had 2 jobs working 6-7 days a week. And I mean, the shit at the clothing store, though, it was different because it wasn't like work. It was pretty much just like hanging out and getting paid for it. It was just a passion project, kind of.
Mm-hmm. And so when you were writing these names down, was your goal to just talk to interesting people, or was it to add more revenue to your life? What was the...
My goal in life with this podcast is to talk to people that I find interesting about what they do and how they got to that point in life. And the reason I started doing this is because, I work in the engineering field, you work in the health field. There's so many jobs that I've always been curious about, and that always like really, really interested me, and I always wanted to learn more about them. And we live in this world now where everyone's addicted to their phone, and like I'm super guilty of it. I'm just like looking at it at all times. I'm looking at it, and it's sickening. So this is a good excuse for me to sit down with someone, have a good conversation, and learn about people's jobs that I want to learn about. So it's my podcast, so I can curate it however I want. I'm a super big control freak, so I like doing everything myself. That's why I'm always running and moving. It's just like I don't trust people to do it the way I want it to be done, so I always have to. That's why I started learning how to do the podcast myself. That's another reason my old one fell apart, is because I was relying on someone to be a producer and create. They only knew how to do the editing and all that shit. So whenever I started this new one, I was like, I need to be able to do everything from beginning to scratch. So I sat down with my buddy, and he taught me the ropes, and then I just, I dove into it head first and started learning. But I just wanted to learn about different people. Like, for instance, I always tell people, a perfect example was I talked to a funeral director. And I've always been interested in the whole world of death. People die, and you would go to a viewing, and you would see just a dead body in the casket, and you wonder how that happens.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered that, and I've always wondered who are the people that get them dressed and take care of them, and who does all this. So I found a girl, I put a post on Facebook, and I was like, does anyone know any funeral directors? And I knew people would know people, and they would tag them. And that's whenever your judgment has to come into play. So what I'll do is, once I have, if I ever ask people for a list of suggestions, like funeral directors, I didn't know anyone personally. So I had to put that out there on Facebook. And it's easy to get overwhelmed on Facebook with garbage suggestions. So I went through everyone that was suggested, and I wanted to find someone that would offer a different point of view. When you think of a funeral director, you think of an older, creepy guy that does that, or you think of Sphinx from Gone in 60 Seconds.
Yeah.
But this girl was like this, cute little hipster woman. I always say girl, and you're supposed to say woman, but this cute hipster woman, and she just has been doing this forever, and she just always wanted to do it. And I always thought I thought she would offer a good opinion about it, because it's this young girl who's getting into this profession that's super dark and unpleasant, I would say. So I wanted to know what got her into that. So anytime I have a potential guest idea, I will go on their Instagram, and I will creep all their stuff from back to literally their first post. And the reason I do that is just to get a kind of a vibe of how they are. But I also do it because I don't have a template for any of my podcasts. I will think about conversation that I want to have with the guest, and I just rely on that basic through line. And if it goes off, it goes off. I don't have a set template, because I like the possibility of where we could go with it. But for instance, I was going through this girl's Instagram, and I saw she had a bookshelf with like books of comedians, Steve Martin's biography, a couple other people. So I was like, oh damn, this girl's like into comedy, and she does this. I also messed around with some comedy shit. So I was like, I think she would be a real good person. So she just came over, we talked, and it's still one of my favorite podcasts that I've ever done, just because you learn about so much shit.
Oh yeah, I mean I've had no intentions of making any money. I never wanted to throw ads in this podcast, just because as a podcast listener myself, it's annoying. I hate how, say, Joe Rogan takes the first 15, 20 minutes of his podcast to just name off ads. I don't really care if this makes money. I just care that people get something out of it. My top episode so far has been a episode called Anxiety and Depression with one of my friends named Ryan, and that got so much good traction, and people were messaging me saying how, hey, I didn't know people did these things that I did, and I'm going through the same thing these people are going through. And it's just awesome to feel that feedback and to feel like I've touched someone else other than me. And yes, learning is great. That's another big reason why I want to be doing this. But I think the main reason why I'm making this is just because I like to talk. I mean, I'm a very extroverted person. I can make friends with anybody I come in contact to, more than likely. And it feels good to talk to people.
Yeah, especially in today's world, man. Everyone's just on their phone, and no one even wants to have a regular phone call anymore. Everyone just wants to text. And like I'll hit up my friends, and I'll try to call them, and they'll hit the ignore button and text me back and say what's up, and I'm just like, Jesus, like it's so much easier to just talk to me on the phone for 20 seconds instead of going back and forth through this text message. So having a conversation with someone is just so much, I mean, it's just better. It's almost like forcing you to exercise that muscle.
Yeah, and to be present.
Yeah, to be present in it and not look at your phone and be actually like intrigued by something else. You know, I talk to literally everyone from, you know, I've been lucky enough to have people on that are pretty, you know, big name people that produce for like Wiz Khalifa, Mac Miller. I've had people on that play in big name touring bands, and I'm lucky enough to have them on, but I also have people on that are just regular people. Like I had Jay on, and for people that are listening, Jay is Nico's cousin, and it's just like he was a fan, and he hit me up and he was like, yo, man, could I be number 10? And I was like, hell yeah, you could be number 10. Like, I don't care who comes on because everyone is interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I sat on my porch with my wife one morning, and actually I might have been by myself, but I was just sitting there and I was like looking at each of the houses, and I was just seeing people like walk through their windows, and like I would see them walk through their living room, and I'm just like, man, like every single person in that house has a whole different life.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a normal dude that works at a regular engineering company, but I feel that my life was kind of interesting, and, you know, people like to hear about it, I guess. So every other person that I'm looking at, I'm sure they have good stories to tell and good things to talk about.
Yeah, everybody has their own life stories and trials and tribulations that they've gone through. And I love that. I love that everybody's an individual.
Yeah.
And with like all this automation going around, with everybody losing their jobs to machines and stuff like that, I feel like this personal interaction and being able to talk to people and being able to convey your story is going to be really valuable in the future, because once everything gets automated, I mean, all it is creativity that's left in this to show yourself.
Yeah, and you got to rely on your product to stand alone in the world of many others. Like the podcasting world is a perfect example. Like, it's such a saturated world right now, and it's so weird because like whenever I started my first one 4 years ago, I did all these podcasts to no one. Like no one was get 20 listens, and no one even knew what a podcast was. And fast forward 5 years, like everyone in the world is listening to them. My mother, my father, like every different age, every different nationality, race, like there's a podcast for everyone. If you have a favorite hobby and you look on the podcast app and you type that in, there's going to be podcasts that pop up for that exact thing.
Oh, 100%.
If you like hula hooping, that's just a random thing that popped into my head. I guarantee you that there's a podcast about hula hoops.
If not an episode,
Yeah,
or a couple hundred episodes.
100%, dude. Like,
Yeah.
there's just and I think that it's a blessing and a curse that there is so many podcasts, because like it's cool that you could type in anything and get, you know, a conversation about that thing, but it's also annoying because like, you know, you have to go through some work to be able to find a good one.
Yeah.
You know, you got to comb through all the bullshit that you see. It's almost like the news. Like, you know, how are you supposed to trust the news? All the news shit that you read is, you know, it's all big news channels, but everything says something different.
Yeah.
You know, that everyone pushes different things. So, I don't know, man. My podcast is just a way for people to get away from it all. I don't talk politics, really. I don't talk about anything, like, super pressing, because, you know, that shit is just, that's injected into our brains all day, whether we like it or not, through just scrolling through Facebook.
Yeah.
You got to hear all these people's opinions about everything, and like, who are you to say anything? Like, who am I to say anything? You know, I just like talking to people and hearing how they think and what makes their fucking, I'm sorry, I swore.
No, you're
makes
good.
their
You're
mind
good.
swear, or makes their mind turn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I think the market's become so saturated because people are starting to see that, hey, this shit is like taking off right now, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And
They see it's a possibility through like Rogan and like Mark Maron and all these people that are like the godfathers of podcasting. They see that like Joe Rogan does them ads, that 15 minutes of ads, he probably makes 50 grand.
Oh yeah, easy.
And I mean, like, that's understandable, and I agree with what you say. Like, I didn't start this. Like, I always say, like, I don't care who listens to my shit. Like, if you don't like it, that's fine. Don't listen to it. I don't need to have listens. It's cool to see that. It's cool to see people enjoy what I put out and respond to it, and I'm appreciative for all the reviews and downloads and everything, which are super important. So definitely add a rate and review to this podcast. But I'm just like, you know, I'm just out there trying to, you know, give people something that is different. That's why, like, I don't really listen to music anymore. I'm constantly listening to podcasts, and I want to consume knowledge, something that is going to, like, stimulate my mind rather than listening to the same, you know, Bone Thugs and Harmony CD 1,000 times.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's my favorite thing about podcasts in general is just how much knowledge you can gain. Like, I've listened for probably every day at work for a year straight. I listened to this one health and fitness podcast.
Whose?
Mind Pump.
Mind Pump.
Yeah,
I
it's.
don't know if I've ever heard of it.
Look it up if you want to learn something or you're interested in health and fitness. Look them up. They're really.
You listen to Aubrey Marcus?
I don't think I've heard of Aubrey Marcus.
Aubrey Marcus is part owner of a brand called On It. You familiar
Oh yeah,
with them?
I know On It. Yeah.
So Aubrey Marcus and Rogan's involved with them too. But Aubrey Marcus is the wildest dude ever. He is, you know, he started this company. On It is a human optimization company. So they sell supplements, workout equipment, and it's all ran by people that are just like into martial arts, into feeling good and like doing good things in life. And he is super, super motivating and interesting, and you should definitely check his out.
I'll definitely.
If you
check
like all
him
the
out.
health and fitness stuff, he talks about all kinds of weird shit. Like, they'll talk about sleep, how the cryo chambers are beneficial. How, I mean, you got everything you want, and that's just a perfect example about like podcasting allows you to, you know, find a topic about anything. Or
Yeah, seriously.
conversation about anything.
I gained so much knowledge in that 1 year of listening to those health and fitness podcasts than I did ever in my courses of certifications and all that. And I've been taking certifications since I was 17.
Yeah, ain't that crazy?
Yeah, it's just people learn differently, and I think generally everybody learns at least some bit by listening to people talk about it and going through that experience with them.
Yeah.
And I've just figured out that that's the best way for me to learn.
What's the best way to do it? Because, like, you know, the reason I listen to all Rogan stuff is because, you know, that dude came up as just a regular dude. Family was divorced. He had some shitty jobs and just became a comedian. He's not, like, educated. He didn't go to college. I think he went to college for 1 semester, but, like, this dude is, like, probably the smartest civilian living.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the smartest
Easy.
dude that has no schooling past high school. And people are blown away whenever I say that, but, like, he talks to everyone from, like, you know, people like Jeff Ross and Dave Attell, who are, like, some of the greatest comedians living, to, like, Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, this guy talks, he's just a regular dude. He's a regular dude like us that laughs at dick jokes, laughs at fart jokes, you know what I mean? But he's also interested in learning about things and developing his own choices and his own opinions. So I feel like whenever Rogan talks to someone, I feel that he chews up all that information and he comes to his own conclusion and then he talks about it. I feel that he never pushes anything down anyone's throat. And if anything, he changes his mind whenever he talks to people, and that's what I like about it. You know, like, I'm not someone who's super educated with anything, but, you know, I like to take stuff in because everyone's beliefs are their beliefs because they believe in them, right? So they have passion in their beliefs, and they have they truly believe in all that. So there has to be some validity in there, and you have to be able to gain something from people's beliefs, whether it not be exactly what you believe. It could open up a door that lets you expand your thoughts about that certain. That was kind of a weird way to describe it, and I hope people understood what I was trying to say, but hopefully they did.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be very open-minded.
Yeah.
And I feel like Joe Rogan does that so well, and that I think everybody can take something off of him.
Yeah.
And whether it be why THC and CBD is beneficial, or him talking to some astrophysicist about chemistry or some science, I don't know.
Or if he's just talking to a UFC fighter about, like, you know, their workouts and their lives. I was listening to him and Michael Bisping on the way here, and, you know, I get how people don't like my wife, for instance. She loves my podcast, obviously, because she's my wife, but she started to get into podcasts more, but she doesn't like Rogan. She doesn't listening to him. She gets a weird, like, she gets, like, almost like a douchebag meathead type of vibe from him, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know. I think maybe it's because I've been listening to him for 10 years. Who knows?
Probably.
I'm super biased against it.
So, going back to your first podcast, you said you started that right before you guys went into college, or as you were transitioning?
So I started that right after I got out of Slippery Rock. I came home and I was just working, and then that's whenever I started the podcast with my buddy, and that went on for, I think, 11 episodes maybe. But in that 11 episodes, we were able to podcast with Bert Kreischer, who's, like, an incredible comedian, friends with Rogan, on all kinds of, he had specials on Netflix, everything. So I just hit him up and I was like, yo, man, would you ever want to podcast with us? You're coming to the Pittsburgh Improv, like, we'll meet up with you. And he was like, hell yeah. But, like, it was so easy because there was no podcast. So he wasn't probably getting hit up by 90 people. Now everyone has a podcast, and you have to rely on your product to, you know, set you aside from everyone else.
That's crazy that you got him on.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a really awesome time, and he was just, like, an awesome guy. Like, we went to the Improv, met him there, and, you know, he took us back into the green room, and we podcasted for, I think, like 34 minutes while his opener was on. We literally podcasted until he was sitting there and we were just talking, and you hear in the background, like, up next, our next comedian. And he was like, all right, fellas, this is my time. Set the microphone down, took his shirt off, and walked right out. And everyone's cheering. And you're just like, damn, dude, like, this is insane.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, like, it was super awesome that he did that. And it's just like, that shows you how much the podcasting world manifested and, you know, just changed in the last. That was 4 years ago.
Yeah, really.
And there was no one in the city of Pittsburgh 4 years ago with podcasts.
I was about to say, how would that have affected you if you continued that?
Oh, it would have been epic, but like we weren't ready.
Yeah.
Like that shit. If it was meant to, I believe a lot in if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Oh, of course.
I don't know why I believe in that. I'm not super religious or anything like that, but I feel like things happen for a certain reason, and I feel that I just have confidence in myself to be able to adapt to what's happening. So like that podcast probably would have fizzled out. We had no idea what we were doing. You know what I mean? Like It was just people coming in a room and we were just being ridiculous and bullshitting. And if I made that podcast now, people would not listen to it.
Oh, of course.
You know what I mean? So I use all the failures that I have, like my clothing line that didn't go through, that first podcast, and I just like learn from all that shit. And I try to apply that to what I want to do now. That's why it took me 4 years to start another one. Like I always wanted to do another one, just I had to wait for the right time.
Yeah, I mean, and failure, literally the only thing failure is just a learning experience. It's a way that you tested something out and it didn't work. So why didn't it work? It's all just a learning experience. And I think with what you are doing right now, you've obviously learned from all of your past or most of them, at least I would say.
Yeah, I mean, and I try to just make it. I try to apply all those factors to what I want to do because I still want to be like true to what I want to do and talk about what I want to talk about and have on the people that I want to have on. Like I don't want it to be super I don't want it to be super stuffy. Do you listen to a lot of other podcasts?
Yeah, I listen to probably 4 or 5 of them, 4 or 5 different podcasts.
So there's like comedians that I was thinking about who really influences me. Okay, there's a guy named Mark Maron. You know who that is?
No.
Mark Maron's a super good, he's probably the best interviewer of anyone that's doing podcasts right now. It's very different and it's not as rigid of a template, but you should check him out. He even started before Rogan.
Oh, wow.
President Obama did a podcast with Mark Maron. President Obama flew to Mark Maron's house. The Secret Service closed down his entire block, and President Obama did a podcast with Mark Maron in his small, cluttered garage.
Oh, my gosh. That's insane.
Yeah, it's and that right there, whenever that happened was such a big deal because that was showing the world how much podcasting was affecting everything. Barack Obama wanted to market to a certain pool of people, and that shows you how powerful podcasting is. He could have went on the news, he could have went on that, but the people that are listening to podcasts that's almost a whole different world of people.
Oh yeah,
you're
a whole different
everyone.
Media.
Yeah, because it's not censored. You know what I mean? People could say whatever they want, and you don't have to worry about the corporate guidelines or if people allow you to say this or people allow you to say that. And sometimes people get into shit because they say shit on podcasts.
Oh,
but
of course.
That's the stuff that people really want to learn about and really want to know. And that's why I kind of rely on. That's kind of why I don't have a template, because I just ask things that come to me. And I feel that that's the most genuine conversation because that's a real conversation.
Yeah, it's just a real natural, organic feel to it. And I try my best to do that too. Of course, I'm still fairly new, so I'm still trying to get used to it.
Are you on 18?
Yeah, this is 18 coming up.
So, it's just you're going to progress every single episode you put out. You're going to get better at everything, just like you do with everything in life.
Oh, yeah.
My 50th episode is coming up, and my buddy that I had on the first podcast, so the first episode was a kid named Zach Pishney, who he was a good friend in high school. He was younger than me, but we used to travel to shows to see this band like Moths to Flames. We used to travel there and see them everywhere we used to go. And now this kid is in the band traveling the world with them.
Oh,
and
wow.
He's their guitarist. And, it's such an incredible thing to see it. I just actually got to go see his show on Thursday. He played in Pittsburgh. But I had him on for the first episode, and it was such a terrible episode because I had, 25 questions written down, and it was basically just me like, oh, so Zach, what kind of guitar do you play? And him having an answer and me not paying attention and me just worrying about the next question to ask. So, like, I understand that people have, like, things that they want to talk about, but I just think it does a disservice for me to try to put a leash on it.
Yeah, really. I mean, the whole point of this type of media is to really dig in deep to people's past and figure out how they tick and how they think and all that stuff. And I believe that if you have those questions written down on your screen and you're looking at them and you're trying to focus on two things at once, it's just going to take away from the experience.
Yeah, you're not present.
Yeah, no, going back to the beginning when we were talking about presence, yeah, you're not present at all. And I think, like you said, that's a really big disservice not just to you but to them and also to your viewers or your listeners, because they see that shit all the time on TV. They see that shit on the radio. I mean, shit, and their ads when they're listening to freaking Spotify, they hear that shit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the least we can do is just make it as normal as possible, as organic as possible.
Yeah, and there's other podcasts that have, like, more rigid of a template where they stick to certain times. Like, they'll only stay at, like, an hour and shit like that. But, I just never wanted it to be like that. That's why I figured I'd do it how I want in the beginning. So the people that get behind it, they get behind it, and it's going to stay that way. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to, like, cater to, like, trying to get a bunch of followers in the beginning because, like, I didn't want to, like, be fake, because if I was not being genuine with the product I was putting out, whenever I changed to being genuine and putting out what I really wanted to, those people that followed me for the wrong reasons are just going to leave anyway.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So
You got to keep that integrity.
Yeah, I've always been someone that's just like, if you don't like me, then fuck you, and
yeah, seriously,
that's fine. But I've always like been proud of the type of person that I was, where I've always dressed how I wanted. I've always, like, liked what I wanted, did what I wanted, and I've definitely, like, taken, inspirations from people, but, I'm not someone that, like, follows any sort of, like, trend or, like, norm. It's just, this is life.
You're just you.
Yeah, this is
You're
just
an
life.
individual.
Where every day shit is getting different. So how could you base yourself off of someone else's life?
Yeah.
Everyone is just different.
It's just like saying, I want to be just like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
You're never going to be Joe Rogan.
Never.
You're never going to be your parents. You're never going to be the billionaire next door. You're going to be you.
Yeah, and you just have to rely on what you do to make some shit happen.
Yeah, and I mean, if anybody can get anything from this, is just be yourself. Don't worry about being anybody else but yourself. Take what you got and roll with it, because I was definitely blessed with the charisma I have today, but not always the speech. I'm usually lacking on, like, speaking, like enunciating my words, having a little bit of a lisp,
Yeah,
how that is.
It's because we're normal people, and
Exactly.
I think that's why people like that. Like, I swear way too much on my podcast, and it's not
Sorry,
that.
I'm pretty bad too.
And it's terrible, but it's like, if you're not listening to me because I'm swearing, you're not the person that I want to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
And I pretty much, I've been lucky enough to have people support what I've done, and they like hearing me talk to people, and I get good feedback, and people definitely have been rating and reviewing in the podcast, and it helps me out because, like, just seeing people respond to it makes you want to keep going with it. It makes you want to keep progressing it and keep like leveling your shit up and just getting better and better.
Yeah, speaking of the ratings and reviews, what was your experience for your first rating and your first good rating and review?
Well, I think that my first ratings and reviews were by my friends. If you got friends that are supporting what you do, I remember waking up one day and I had like 7 from all different ones of my friends, and it's cool that they do that. Your friends supporting you is definitely something that needs to be. Whether they like the shit that you're putting out or not, they're your friends. Support what your other friends are doing. But the ratings and reviews, I don't think people understand how important they are for a podcast.
Oh yeah.
Because like people say, oh, I mean, it literally only takes like 2 minutes to do, and but it's a double-edged sword because like pretty much the only rating reviews that matter are the ones that are on Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Apple podcasting rating reviews are the most important because that's what's like pushing your name to the top of the lists of things. Like my podcast is under society and culture, and I'm waiting for that day for it to break that top 200 list, and I just keep working towards that. I'll check it, and one of these days it's going to be up there.
Yeah, what are you at right now? Do you know off the top of your head?
For what?
For where you're at ratings, right?
I have no idea how to tell that. I don't really know how that works, but I will just, search there. But if you look at like the 200, the top 200, and you go to like podcast 200, like all those people have like 1,000 reviews or something like that.
Oh yeah, they haven't really.
Yeah, like that definitely like comes into play. So that's why you just got to keep getting people to bump your reviews, and like that's why like it helped me out because I started to do that clothing line long ago. So I've always been into like the clothes and like making shit and like monetizing stuff. So I made t-shirts and pins and all kinds of shit, and you have to like. That's why I do some giveaways and stuff. Like I'm doing a 10,000 downloads giveaway where I'm giving away like 3 different prizes. One's stickers, one's a hoodie and stickers and pin, and the other one's a pin. And like that's just to give people some initiative to like kind of do that and like kind of take the time and review and rate, because like I mean people will never understand how important that is.
Oh yeah.
Just because they're not doing it. They think it's just like, oh yeah, I mean it's just rating and review, and I'm guilty of it too. I've been guilty of listening to podcasts for years and not rating and reviewing it. But once I started my podcast,
yeah, it really opens your eyes.
Yeah, I went back through and I was like, it only takes a second, and it's a big difference for people. And to wake up and to see different reviews, like whenever I wake up, I obviously go on the podcast page and I see if anyone left any good or bad reviews. And like whenever you wake up and you read something that like someone really took some time to write,
yeah,
and like that means a lot. You're just like, man, these people are really like getting something from what I'm putting out.
I actually got recently, like this is probably about a month or 2 ago, I got a rating and review from my one of my good friends. His name's Scott, and later that day he had messaged me on Instagram because I'm still trying to work out my thumbnail, trying to figure all that stuff for the picture.
Yeah.
And my friend Scott, he's an artist. He's going to school for arts and stuff like that, and he was like, "Hey, dude, I'm really loving your podcast. Like, would you like me to make you this picture for your podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude. I mean, how much do I owe you?" He's like, "It's nothing. It's free. I just love what you're doing, and I really want to support in every way I can." And I'm like, "Dude, like that made me tear up." I was like, "There's actually people that really like it." I mean, obviously he's my friend, but your friends don't always have to like it.
Exactly.
I mean, they can support you, but they don't have to like it.
Yeah.
And just the fact that people are listening and liking it, whether it be 12 people or 72 people, however many people listen to it,
yeah,
and they actually get something out of it, and that really makes me feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a different message from someone I know who makes music, and he was like, "Hey, I'll make you some intro and outro music," and he's currently working on that right now. His name's Michael Wright, and that all flooded in like in 2 days, 2-day time span, and it was just like, holy shit, like, yeah, I'm actually getting somewhere.
You want to support your friends. Like, if your friends are doing cool shit, like, it's easy to support that, and it's easy to get behind that, and working together with people is, that's more of a benefit than it is than a disservice. Like, there's podcasts around the city that, I'm sure that don't like what I do just because it's something similar to what they do. But like, I don't even really listen to anyone's podcasts in the city, just because it's not that I do it to like be like malicious or
Yeah.
anything. It's just like I don't want to ever subconsciously like take something from someone else.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I'll do some stand-up comedy and shit like that, and I don't really like watch other stand-ups that much unless it's someone that like I love, because like I just never want I want everything that I put out to be mine. You know what I mean?
Genuine.
Like I don't want to like copy off people at all, and I think that that's also why the whole, you know, the idea of the podcasting world being saturated like doesn't really scare me, or like it shouldn't scare someone that's really in it for the right reasons, because you know the cream always rises to the top, and there could be 1,000 people, but if 999 of them sound like shit and yours sounds like good, like yours is going to stand out. So I just, you know, I just rely on putting 100% into me finding the right type of guest, me being consistent, because, you know, if you look up the main reason people unfollow podcasts is because there's a break in a week. So I keep the same release date. I release every Thursday. I release first thing in the morning, so people have it for, you know, the work day. And the only reason I chose Thursday is because like I have a podcast that I listen to that comes out on Tuesday. I have one that comes out on Wednesday that I listen to, and no one like I don't put them out on Mondays or Fridays because usually people take off work Mondays or Fridays.
Yeah.
So it gets looked over. And like as you grow into this podcast shit, you're gonna start realizing things like people. Like, I didn't put one out on Thanksgiving because, like, people aren't going to listen to it that day,
No.
so you're going to waste it.
Yeah.
You know, so I said, screw it, and I just waited. But, like, you'll start learning different ways to fine-tune things that make it work better for you. And you'll start, I mean, like, I'm sure you're going to just keep seeing your numbers grow, because the more you do it, you know, the more people are going to get behind it, the more people are going to show some support and, you know, want to be involved with it. Like, you're going to get people that start hitting you up that want to be on here. You know, I have people now that are contacting me to be on here, and it was like, you know, it was
That's
a pain
that's a good situation to be in.
It's a pain in the ass in the beginning to try to get people, because, you know, you want all these like good big name people, but they don't trust what you're doing because you only have like 10 followers or something.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, whenever I tell people like, oh, I'm doing this podcast, like there was a photographer that I had on named Jordan Beckham. And he's kind of a big deal in the city. Like, he's worked with that Gabby Barrett girl who was just on American Idol. I think she took second place. But he works with, like, Wiz Khalifa, Gabby Barrett, all these people. And I remember asking him in the beginning whenever the podcast was just an idea. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm doing this podcast. I'd love to have you on to talk about, like, your idea, like how you got to this point. Because he grew up a skateboarder in the city. And I just knew that we would have a good conversation. And he was dodging me for months, you know, like he just, he didn't, you know, I wasn't nothing to him because like, I didn't have anyone.
It wasn't beneficial.
Yeah,
to
it wasn't
him.
beneficial. So like, as it progresses and as you have different people on and people start to hear that, like, you know what you're doing and you're not just like screwing around and you're really like putting in the time and you want this to be something, people are going to start respecting that a little bit more. And once you get your numbers to grow and people see that, like, oh, people are really listening to this will be beneficial to me, then you'll start to get more people that are going to come on, and it'll be easier. But it's, you know, it's regardless, it's always going to be a grind, dude. Like, every day, like, I don't backlog a bunch of episodes of this podcast because, like, I don't like them to be dated.
Yeah.
That's why, like, I'll only backlog like one episode because, like, I don't want them to be super dated, because like if I had that conversation 3 weeks ago and I'm putting it out this week, like I lost the fire for that conversation. You know, I don't even remember what the hell we talked about. But I mean, it's a constant game, dude. You're just trying to figure out how to keep leveling up.
All right. Well, I have 2 questions for you because we need to wrap it up. I got to go to this Christmas party.
I know. I apologize.
No, this is honestly, dude, I would rather miss Christmas time for this because I see you as sort of a mentor, and hopefully that doesn't sound like weird because I didn't really ask for that, but I see you as like an inspiration to me. I see you as someone who's doing it, going through it, and like succeeding, and that really, knowing somebody that is doing that is really just inspirational to me because you are one of the sole reasons I started this was because my cousin's friend started a podcast, and he's getting big, and he's growing, and he's talking to people for the right reasons. He's not out for the money. He's just a real genuine guy starting a podcast. And I was like, I can do this now. Like, I've been thinking about it, and I'm gonna go through with it. So
everyone could do it, man. The only thing that's going to set you aside from other people is if you keep doing it. You know, people start this shit all the time. They start a podcast all the time, and you know, by the third, fourth week, they skip a week and they don't put one out, or they forget to do this. And you could tell the people they're not really into it for the right reasons. You know, I see what you do, and like, I appreciate all that. And like that's why I'm always open to be on people's podcasts, help out in any way, because like I was hoping for that in the beginning as well. Like, I want people to welcome me into the world instead of just saying like, oh, you're a new podcaster, fuck you, I don't want to compete with you. You know what I mean? Like, those are the people that are insecure with themselves. People that don't want to help other people out are insecure with themselves because they're insecure with their product. Like, I know that no one's going to be able to do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to be able to do what you do. And that's it.
Yeah.
You just got to keep doing it.
All right. So my two questions are, what have been the single most biggest trial or tribulation you've been throughout your life? That could be podcasts, that could be just something that happened to you that was really hard on you. And the second one is, with your growth in your podcast, have you thought about doing more than one episode a week? So you can do it in any order. I don't really care.
So just popped in my head. So I won't do more than one a week. I do sometimes if I have like kind of people that are involved in like kind of the same thing. Like, for instance, the one week I had an artist that I knew was doing an art show at this really incredible restaurant called Streets on Carson, and I wanted to interview the owner of the venue, and I wanted to interview the artist that is having their show in that venue. So I had them two on one week. Then I interviewed my buddies who were in like a R&B band, and I didn't want to split that up and make that 2 weeks because, like, you know, people already heard about that. I wanted the next week to be something fresh. So them two promoting the same thing, I put them both in 1 week. And I'll do it on like a Tuesday, and then I'll drop another episode on a Thursday. So I don't plan on adding, 2 episodes a week, just because, you want people wanting more of it.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you just want people wanting to come back and listen to what you got. You want them to be excited about what you're going to put out next. Now I'm getting all kinds of texts like, who do we got this week? Like, whenever I post, like, I always keep my Instagram, like, I really worked hard on that because, that is a big deal. If you think about it and you go to someone's Instagram page, people judge you off your followers.
Yeah.
If you have 10 followers, people aren't going to bat an eye at you. But if your Instagram page looks like shit, people judge you from that. So you have to take into all them small things into consideration. Even if it's not a big deal to you, it's a big deal to the other people that are actively, that you're doing it for. You're making that Instagram page not for you, to promote your shit to other people. So you want people to see that in a certain way that makes them want to go towards it. So I mean, I never have more than one guest on, really, because I think it's distracting, and I'll never put out 2 episodes in a week unless there's some reason that I am.
All right.
Because I think that it's better that way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But like, I know there's a lot of successful podcasts that have more than one guest on.
Oh yeah,
at a time. I think
they
it's
can
distracting.
do it. Yeah.
I think it's distracting for my template because I want to learn about people's lives. So if I ask you, for instance, like, oh, where'd you grow up? And then you tell me and you go off for a couple minutes about where you grew up and how you grew up, and then there's another guest there, and I flip over and say, so where did you grow up?
Yeah.
People already forgot what you said while they're listening to other people.
That makes sense, yeah.
And can you repeat the first question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. What was one of the biggest trials or tribulations you've had throughout your life that you'd be willing to share? It could be about anything throughout your life. It doesn't have to be
trials
just
and tribulations. I mean, I've been pretty lucky in life. Like, I've never had anything super crazy, super super bad happened to me, I'd say that the thing that I've always been most vulnerable about is I think the only thing that I need to get better in life with is like my physical health.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I played football my entire life, and after football and shit, I lost a bunch of weight, and then I got into the working world, and I just gained it all back.
Yeah.
Dude. And I think that that's like the only thing that's always been like gnawing at the back of my mind that I need to get under control, because like everything else with my life I'm happy with. I'm happy in the points that I am. This podcast is going great for me, so I'm happy with this. I'm happy that I'm married. I got a good life. I'm got a good home place, but I think that I got to take care of myself a little bit more. That's the next thing on the list, and that's the biggest thing that I've always struggled with in life was my mental whenever it has to do with weight and working out and all that shit. Like it's that's the biggest beast that I've ever had to like come in contact with.
Okay, and you'll notice once you start going down that path and you're getting healthier and you're losing that weight and you're feeling better, that everything else in your life is going to start picking up as well. It's going to get better.
Yeah.
Just because you're going to be in a better mental state because you've lost that weight and you've gone through that
100%
challenge.
100%.
And then you'll have probably more energy to go do more tasks and have better focus for them. So
yeah, I mean, like I did it once already, so I know how to do it, and I know that I have to do it, and I know that it's beneficial. But I'm taking steps, dude. I just started jiu-jitsu.
Oh,
so,
I love jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, so like I've wanted to do it for like 10 years, and ever since I started listening to Rogan, like the way that he talks about it and the way that anyone who does it talks about it, you just like that there's something there that's that's incredible. So me and my buddies, me and my two friends signed up on Black Friday for this place called Stout, Pittsburgh. It's a Renzo Gracie gym. Okay. And I started doing this, and this is literally the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Oh my gosh.
And it's really helping me because like after I get out of a jiu-jitsu class, like your mindset is way better. You're in a way better mindset. You feel better about things, and you know that you're working.
Yeah, you pushed yourself.
Yeah, you got to put in the time.
Oh yeah. I mean, coming from I didn't really come from any fighting background, but I am a amateur MMA fighter. I've been out of it for a couple months just because funds. I'm apartment in Crab, not enough money. You know how it is, college student. Anyway, but when I was going through that and learning jiu-jitsu, I mean, by no means am I like amazing at jiu-jitsu. I'm probably proficient. I'm not too big at it, but just the planning you have to do while you're rolling with people. Yeah. I mean, it's insane. You need to be on top of your game like 100% of the time. And the amount of intensity you have to put out just to roll with someone it's insane. It really builds that mental fortitude that you need to push through a lot of things.
Rogan explained it pretty well. He was explaining his body as almost being a battery, and whenever you don't like work out or you don't like expel that energy, you have all this like energy that starts to like pour out and starts to get all gross on you. And the way he described it, like it's not really what happens with a battery, but it's kind of a good way to think about it. Like you working out and everything, like you expel all that energy, and like there's nothing that I've done in the past 10 years since I've played football where my mindset, where you have to completely forget about everything you do and just like kind of just do it. And that's how I feel with jiu-jitsu. Like everything I can't think about anything else. I just have to concentrate on that. And it's a good way to get away and
to be present.
Be present.
All right, that's a perfect way to end it. Chad, go ahead, plug what you need.
I do a podcast. It's called I'll Call You Right Back. You can find it on all platforms. Instagram is at I'll Call You Right Back. I'm doing a giveaway. I don't know, man. Just listen. If you like this, I'm sure you'll like that. I talk to interesting people about what they do and how they got to that point in life, and definitely give some Porch Talk a rate and review, because that's super important for people that are doing things like this. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, Chad, thanks so much.